Hello everyone, my name is Adam Huber, the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources here in Allen County, Kentucky. And we're here today on a beautiful day in February, the last day of the month actually. And February and then into March is a good time to start thinking about pruning your orchards. And so we're here today with Mr. Daniel Becker. He's an extension associate for fruit and vegetable. He's based out of the Princeton location at the University of Kentucky. And so today what we're going to do is we're on one of our great producers' place here in Allen County. And Daniel's going to go through the orchard today. We're going to prune some apple trees, and we're going to prune some peach trees as well. And just kind of give you guys a short tutorial on how to prune your trees properly. So I'm going to turn it over to Daniel, and we'll get started on our apple trees first, then we'll move on to our peaches.
It looks to me like these apple trees are semi-dwarf on semi-dwarfing rootstocks, and the training system is vertical axis. We have a central leader going up the center, and then scaffold limbs that decrease in size going upward. Usually that creates a conical tree shape on these young trees, and we want to try and maintain that, but we also want to try and maintain the fruit-bearing potential of these trees, as well as get plenty of sunlight and light down into the center of the canopy. That way we can have a large bearing surface and keep most of that bearing low and evenly distributed throughout that canopy. So we have a central trunk on this central leader tree, and then we have down low, we have 1, 2, 3, and on this side 4 scaffold limbs. Those are our primary scaffold limbs down low. These will be remain permanent, and then we have another 3 at another tier, 1, 2, 3 up here. And then these little nubbins right here, those are the spurs. That's where the flower buds will come out. And it takes a couple years for these to develop, so apples bear on older perennial spurs that last several years, and so we want to keep a little bit more older wood on these trees. But again, we want to open that tree up, and we want to keep a lot of light into that canopy of that tree. So when we prune an apple tree, we prune it a little bit lighter than we do a peach tree. We can take off about 20% of that wood annually. So I have this scaffold out here, and on these young trees we want to columnarize this scaffold limb. So we're going to take out any water sprouts, this one right here, using a thinning out cut. So we'll take that one that's going straight up out, and then we'll take this one that's going into the center out on this side. Okay? And that was a crossing branch that we took out there, and this is columnarized enough for this tree right now. That's good enough, and we got plenty of fruit on that tree, of plenty of spurs. So that we see another water sprout going up right into the center of that tree. We'll just take that out right there, and then take that one out next to it with my hands here. So these these loppers can take out wood that's up to about 1.5 inches in diameter, and it makes short work on these dwarf trees. Then we have this cut right here that was made last year, and it was left as a stub. What ends up happening with stubs is they either do one or two things. They rot out, or they produce a whole bunch of water sprouts that create a lot of shade in the center of that tree. Once that shade gets in there to about more than 60% shade, we lose fruiting potential inside that tree. So it's best to just take out those water sprouts and remove those stubs entirely. There we go. See, that opened up that tree right there. So we got another scaffold limb. That's columnarized enough for this style of tree shape. If we had a much more dwarfing rootstock, we'd columnarize that more on slender spindle. So moving around. I like to focus on one scaffold limb at a time. Just continue taking out water sprouts. This one right here, just take that out on that side, and then take this vigorous water sprout out on this side. Okay? Okay, and then we've got a hanger right down here on this scaffold limb. If this gets fruit on it, that's going to hang way down in the way of our mower or our herbicide spray boom. So we'll just take that out. We'll just take this one out as well. Okay, and then I want to promote the vigor of this one, and this one might end up shading it. So just take this secondary scaffold limb out on this side here to create a little bit more light. And don't worry, that'll fill back in throughout the season. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 scaffold limbs right here. And I can probably take out this secondary one that'll end up hanging down here and shading this one. If it gets shaded, these scaffold limbs are going to end up being devigorated, and they'll get weaker and weaker. So we want to promote the vigor of these scaffold limbs right here. And then we see another side or scaffold limb on this side, and this one has some fruit on it, but it's also shading this one down here. So if it's within 24 inches or so, we want to take that out to keep a lot of light on that lower scaffold limb and promote its growth. Okay, going up here, that looks pretty good down on that side. We have another set of scaffold limbs right here. And then we have this side competing branch. We'll just take that out because it's shading the lower one, and it doesn't have a lot of fruit on it. Okay? Getting to that Christmas tree conical shape right there. And on this scaffold limb, that seems okay. This one's getting a little bit high right here. It's going to start competing with the central leader. So we'll just take and use a thinning out cut where we reduce the number of branches and thin that out to an outward facing branch at a wider angle. Okay? And then we can do the same one to this right here on this side. Then thin that out to a wider one outside the facing branch, and be careful, try not to leave too many stubs. Same way with this one. Okay, and that one over there's going to compete with that one down there, so that's okay. And then we've kind of lost the central leader at this top part right here. And what we've got this one right here, this one right here, and we'll just try and take one that's generally the most upright and prune out the rest on this tree. Try and maintain that vigor going upward. And then this tree looks pretty good. Well, we've got a little bit of a crossing branch right down here. We'll just take that out and just remove that upright right there. And then this tree looks pretty good for this year. It's also important to know when to slow down, take a step back on pruning, and then assess your work. And to my eye, this tree looks pretty good. We can leave this and be happy with it. What we've got here is we've got a peach tree, and peach trees bear differently than apple. They have flower buds, whereas on annual wood, so on last year's wood, almost 1 year old, that's where they have their flower buds, and they only flower and only produce leaves on 1 year old wood, whereas apples can have leaves on older wood and flower buds on spurs that live several years. Peaches do not. They have flowers on 1 year old wood. Now you might want to come up and do a close-up of this to show. I'll point out the flower buds on here, and you can tell the 1 year old wood because it's smooth In some cases it's sort of red or sort of tan in this coloration. It's not becoming older or more rough like sandpaper. It's nice and smooth. And then the flower buds, we look at this one right here, right at the tip of my fingernail. Those fat buds on the side are the flower buds. Now if I pop those off on the outside, we've got three buds on each node. That little lance-shaped bud in the center, that's where all the leaves come out. And the leaves come out after they flower. And again, that's only on last year's growth. So in pruning peach trees, we actually prune them harder than apples. We can take off more wood because we want to renew that growth and have lots of new growth on those trees. Also, where most of the fruit is on these trees is on unbranched shoots, longer than a foot, and a little bit less than 36 inches. So wood that's between 1 and 3 feet long. If it's weak and short like this, that's less than 8 inches, less than a foot, there might be fruit on that, but it's always going to be small. It's going to be greener, likely more shaded, and it's just not going to be as good. We want to aim for fruit that's softball size, nice and red, sweet and juicy. So again, this is what we're aiming for with these with this wood here. Okay. And then whereas apple trees are trained to a central leader on our vertical axis system, the peaches are trained to a goblet shape, like a wine goblet, where it's open in the center, and then we've got a wall of greenery, green leaves on the outside, and then the canopy's fairly thin. It can be a little bit wider at the bottom, but as it goes up, it narrows out, and that helps get lots of light down into the center of the tree. Again, apple flowers can take and apple fruit buds can take a little bit of shading and hang on. Peach flower buds, when they get shaded, they die, and we can lose those renewal points. So, on a peach tree, we have a central trunk, and it comes up to scaffold limbs, and then it's open in the center, and we want to keep that center open. So some of our work is keeping that center open, and we'll take out these water sprouts on the inside that's going into the center of that tree. And just like with larger apple trees, we want to focus on one scaffold limb at a time to make make what's a fairly complex job a little bit more simple, so we don't get discouraged, we don't get confused, and we don't hesitate too much. So any ones that are going in the center of that tree we'll take out, just like this one. Okay, and I like to work up from the bottom upward. Okay. And when we have scaffold limbs, ideally, we want those scaffold limbs to come out at 60 degrees, or like on a clock face, 10 and 2. If they're wider, we're going to get a whole bunch of water sprouts that's going to shade out the center, and those water sprouts are going to be less fruitful. If we have it higher, 45 degrees, that's going to push all that growth up to the top, and it's going to create more shade down low. Okay? So in general, when we work up, we want to prune the tops harder than the bottom. So I'm going to try to take out some of the weak wood, like that. This one, less than 8 inches long. That's so if we look at this, this is a 1-year-old growth, less than 8 inches long. Then we've got this swelling down here, and then back down here, that's 2-year-old wood. We're not going to have any fruit on that. So anything less than 8 inches long that grew last year, we'll just take those out. And then it becomes an effort to try and keep most of the fruit down low. Again, I like to pick 75% of peaches from standing on the ground. So within arm's reach to about right down here is where we want most of that fruit on it, about 75%. So it becomes a little bit of an effort to try and keep that those renewal zones and that fruiting zone down low on these peaches. And we want to primarily, again, eliminate cross branches, but also eliminate hangers, because this is going to be quite heavy. That'll hang down there in the herbicide or the mowing zone. So we'll take that out. And again, I'm not worried about this right here. I'm focusing on this scapholum right here. Then going up, well, this tree's getting taller and taller and taller. We've got this scapholum, or this secondary scapholum, going straight upright. That's okay, but I want to keep that growing, growing direction outward and instead of upward. So I'll just take that out right here, doing the big cuts right there. And then we'll do, again, any wood that's way up high, it's going to be harder to pick. And if we want to shorten the height of the tree, with peaches, they're not on dwarfing rootstocks. We do most of our work from the ground, and we control the size of that tree mostly by pruning, and the height of that tree mostly by pruning. So whenever I try and keep the height of that scapholum down low, I can thin out, make a thinning cut, but I always want to thin out to an outward facing 1-year-old branch or 1-year-old shoot. That's okay. Okay. And then we get these older branches right here that we have a whole bunch of fruit on here, but most of our thinning on peaches is also done by pruning. So it's easier to me to just take out those older branches right here. That's going to take a whole lot of fine, finicky work when it comes to hand thinning. Okay. Now that we've got this one right here, we're going to move on to from using our loppers to doing what's called feathering. What that means is taking these branches back and almost making them look like feathers. So we have branches going out like the feathers on a bird. So this one, just columnarize that, make it look like feathers. These ones on the outside, again, this is what ends up happening when it gets shaded. These ones might have a few leaves on them, but this one's always going to be hanger and devigorated, and it's going to shade out this lower one down right here. So it's better to take these out. Might leave that one. We'll have one flower bud on that. Just take that out. And again, when they get shaded down here, they end up having these weakened shoots. It can become diseased. And then if each and every one of these flowers, again, we want to have one fruit every 8 inches of shoot. And that means we got to knock off a whole bunch of those fruits, and it takes a lot of labor. So we'll just take that one out right there. Got some fruit on this side. We got some fruit on this side. Anything that's less than 8 inches of new wood, we'll just take that out. And then we'll take out this wood or these shoots. We have some flower buds on here, so we can leave that one. But in general, it's going to grow up into the center. It should come out. And we can leave that one. It'll hang down with fruit right there. That one might hang down with fruit right there, but this one will likely hang in this one right here. And then again, any of this wood that's older than 2 years old, and we'll leave that one, but take out the one that's less than 8 inches. Take out any of that weak wood. And then when we get to this point right here, where we got a whole bunch of branches on this area, we'll want to space those out to about a hand's distance, 8 inches. So take that out and try and create like the feathers of a bird. That's less than 8 inches. It's less than 8 inches. And then about an 8-inch distance like that. And then we'll snip that off and columnarize it. And it's less than 8 inches. So that's a done scapholum right there. I'm done with that. I can move around to the next scapholum. Okay. Again, this is fairly weak. It might have a few fruits on it, but it's going to be a pain to hand thin or knock those fruits off when it comes time. This one's going to be a hanger right down here that'll hang in there. And if we have a whole bunch of fruits on this one, it might hang down here. But we do want to keep this growing zone. We do want to have fruit down here because there's going to be some nice fruit. What we can do is we can use a heading cut. Now you can use heading cuts on peach trees. It's okay to do it to shorten them up. What that does is that shortens a branch and causes it to branch out or side branch, and it actually thickens and stiffens it. But when we do head back, we always want to try and head back to an outward facing bud. That way we can direct that growth outward. So this grew one last year, moving up. Okay, we'll do the same thing with this one. We'll head these back to an outward facing bud. That's gonna still hang out. So we'll leave one shoot on there and then shorten that back up. We'll keep a few fruits on there, okay? So this one's gonna have fruit on it. It grew all last year, but it's closer than 8 inches and it's gonna be crossing. Then we just take off these side branches right there. That'll make thinning nice and easy. More than 8 inches there, so we can keep that. Little spurs ought to go, and then we'll create like the feathers of a bird. Feather that tree up. Try and get those spaced out. 8 inches. That's also because if we've got a 2 or 3 inch diameter fruit, we'll be hanging right here. We have a hanging right here, and hopefully if we have a fruit on each side, they won't touch. Because if they touch, we're not going to be able to get spray in there. Might get brown rot. Okay, that's pretty good. It's okay to have one coming out. This one's going to be fairly weak. We can leave that one. That one might have one fruit on it. But we're getting a little bit high here, and this is 1-year-old wood. So on this one, what we might do to keep it down low is what we'll do, what's called heading back to an outward lateral. So we can head these back. We're not taking them out entirely. We're not doing a thinning cut, but we're shortening that up and directing that growth outward. That scaffold limb's done. Now what ends up invariably happening on these shoots is we kind of sometimes get these secondary scaffold limbs that branch out. So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking, where's the shading going to be? See, this one's very vigorous, but we want to take off the majority of the fruit on that tree because we thin that tree by pruning. Primarily, if we don't want to thin by hand thinning as much. So this one's going up. It's going up at a little bit higher angle, and it's going to shade out this one. So we want to keep this branch right here, or that scaffold limb, and we want to preserve it, but we want to also thin at the same time and have that growth grow more outward. So when we get to these great big cuts, we can use what's called a 3-part cut. Because if we started on this side and just cut out, likely we'd get a strip of wood. When it starts getting soft, it could rip a strip out of that wood. So it's always okay to come along on the backside, make a cut at point A, right here. That way we're cutting through the bark, and then we can come in on that other side and start pruning out on this side, and then if it starts cracking, that cut will prevent that strip of bark from going down. I like these hand saws because they can do larger wood, larger than 2 inches, something that a smaller loppers cannot do. Okay. This one's going into the center, that one should come out. So coming in on the back side, what we cut out, we want to cut out and not leave a stub, because stubs either produce water sprouts or they die, and they can end up getting infected by cankers. So coming in here, we're going to cut out just at the wound collar. That's that swelling right here, there. And at kind of an angle so water doesn't sit on that cut. We don't need to paint it or anything. In fact, what I like to say is a dry cut's a happy cut, and it's a healthy cut. So no painting. We paint it, and that ends up trapping moisture there, and it can actually produce rocks. Okay, so open up that center of that tree. Very good. It's starting to come into shape. And again, we thin mostly by pruning peach trees. So I need my hand shears. What I'm going to do is take this out, and that's going to do a lot of thinning on that tree. In fact, we want to take off 2/3 of that those flower buds at thinning, leaving us only with a third remaining, and then we can take off 2/3 of those flower buds, or those fruits that developed during hand thinning come about April or May, when they're about nickel to quarter size in diameter, and we'll be left with only about 10% of those flower or fruit buds remaining. Again, polymerize, we can have 1 or 2 fruits on there. That looks okay. Okay, so we get around here. This one's an apt one to feather, so take out those ones that are a little bit weaker, growing straight upright, and create feathers on a tree. About 8-inch distance each direction. So I'll take out that one. Take out that one that's about 8 inches right there. And then that's a lot of little finicky work during pruning. And I like this one right here. We'll just take that one outward, open that up, because we came in here, a whole bunch of flower buds on there. We'd have to come in and just knock those off, and we might have 1 per shoot on there. And that's a lot of work come thinning time. I like to just take branches like these out entirely. That looks good. Okay, we might, because this one's going to hang right there, might hang down there. We'll just shorten that up, but always to an outward bud. Sort of like that one right there. We'll take that one out and then just do the work of feathering. That one might hang right down there. Okay. More feather work. Again, that one's going into the center, so we'll just take that one out. And then just get rid of these little side branches right here. I like to do a lot of my thinning work during the winter. And then this one needs to be shortened up. We'll shorten that one back to an outward facing lateral, so it directs that growth outward. And then this one's not going to produce a whole lot of shading. We can leave that and have maybe a couple fruits on that. Okay, we're down to our last scaffold limb. We get to these. Again, we do most of our work by pruning for thinning. So shorten that up and then feather that out. So I, again, left an outward facing bud. We're getting rid of any of those ones that are less than 8 inches long. And that one's a candidate to go because it's growing upright. Again, that's a bunch of weak wood on that one. So that's a candidate to take out. That one's going to grow straight up into the center. So that's a candidate to take out. Then go on up the uprights, and then that one needs to go because it's got a whole bunch of wood on it that we have to spend a whole lot of time thinning. Okay. Again, that one's going to thin, or that one's going to shade the lower one. We want to keep that shading down low. We want to shorten this one back up and reduce the amount of shade. Okay. Okay, we're getting there. Okay. Again, that weak wood that's only 1 inch or less than 8 inches ought to go. And then feather that up. And that's a pretty good. I'm happy to leave that tree in that state. And come thinning time, it should be easy to thin.